Hey guys, it's Robbie K here, coming at you with yet another movie review. Today we have a double for you, so we're going to start with the ones that I saw first. But before we get into that, let's of course start with how this channel works. First of all, thank you for coming. And if you haven't been to one of my movie reviews, here's how we break it down. We start with the trailer, kind of give you what I expected from it. Bring it then into a quick, dirty review that's usually done around the 3 to 4 minute mark. Then we finish off with a more detailed review with the likes and dislikes to help dive into the Circana. So let's go ahead and get started as my first movie hits you with The Lego Movie 2, the official sequel. Or the second part, I guess is how I should say it. Let's face it, the Lego Movie was an awesome surprise for us back in 2014 with great voice work, actual phenomenal animation, and some decently surprising action and deep story plot that doesn't usually happen sometimes when we get animated movies that aren't Disney. Unfortunately, with this one, um, there was some big high hopes, especially after the two, I guess, indirect sequels that, while good, didn't quite have the same magic as what we had with the first movie. Well, my friends, the Lego Movie 2, the second part, was hoping to continue where the last one left off, kind of going out of the awesome pathway for another conflict between the Sistar system and, of course, the town that Emmett made long, long ago. With it, the two are going to lead into essentially an epic space battle where Queen Whatever I Wanna Be, played by Tiffany Haddish, is hoping to essentially marry Batman. And so, what did I get from the trailer? Another fun comedic action movie that was going to have some fun animation, some good references, and more of the same magic. But perhaps maybe have a little bit of a twist. What was up with it? Well, that's where we go in and find out. So let's get started. In terms of the quick and dirty review, the movie turned out to be a fantastic sequel. And one of those that I really like to say, like in between movie and sequel, it's a great continuation of the actual film. In regards to it, it's funny. It's got clever and wit to it. It's still making fun of a lot of references to films that we love in the days, as well as the modern trends that go about with the political aspects of making movies and movie series. Like, for instance, the Batman series, which I don't want to ruin anything. In addition, though, the movie really comes at it with a fun, fast paced, deep moral filled lessons that once again are surprising in a movie that's about Legos. And perhaps the best thing about it is that it's all nicely wrapped in a fun package that just keeps moving and is manages to keep your attention for almost a 2 hour run. But even cooler about it is the fact that once again, sometimes you can make a fun soundtrack that fits well into the movie but has a life of its own that doesn't have to be a Broadway musical, aka some of the Disney components that we sometimes get. But man oh man, was this a fun soundtrack to go along with. Overall, the Lego Movie 2 is not nearly as good as the first one, I should say. Or maybe nearly is too strong of a word, but not the same movie and not as good as the first movie for me. But the second movie just has a lot of heart, a lot of fun, and a lot of energy that, although a little bit of a repeat, still stands on its own and has a lot of engaging components into it. So definitely worth a trip to the theater for this one, but I will warn parents, beware, your kids are going to be singing a lot of these songs, potentially to the point of annoying the heck out of you, like we saw with some of the Disney soundtracks in the past, aka the Frozen soundtrack syndrome. But if you like that kind of music and you want fun with a good blend of comedy, check this one out. Anyways, guys, that's where the quick and dirty one review ends. Let's get the quick results, and then if you wish to stay, we'll go into the details. In terms of the scores itself, animation, adventure, family, and probably a little bit of comedy, this movie probably gets a solid 8 in my book. Maybe an 8.5 if I'm going to the highest. In terms of movie overall, probably about a 7.5 and 8. Again, really fun, but I still like the first one better. Anyways, if this is where you leave me, thanks for checking it out. Otherwise, if you're sticking around, let's get into a little more of the details. When it comes to the Lego Movie Part 2, we always like to start with the likes in my reviews. And where the likes start with is, let's start quickly with the voice acting. Many of them reprise their same roles and have the same sort of spin that made us fall in love with the characters that they came up with so long ago. So a combination of the direction meeting the voice acting, totally on point. Chris Pratt still plays the quirky Emmett with a can-do spirit, but has to change it up a little bit. Elizabeth Banks, the beautiful voice of Wild Style, who still has the same sass and edge to it, feels great. Of course, Will Arnett is probably my favorite. I love the lines that they have written for him, and his Batman impression is just, it's fun when you see how much they make fun of the actual series. So, kudos to that. Now, in regards to, of course, the characters and the writing, it's spot on. There's so many fun references to it, and very much like Rango, the goal is to try to pick out all the political-based humor and all the movie references that they make, and there are plenty sort of stuffed in. Yeah, maybe not Ready Player One level, but definitely enough there to kind of have a couple of rewatch potential possibilities. So the writing is always fun, and the comedy is very well timed to again appease a number of audiences and still be kid appropriate without crossing the borderline. It's fantastically great and wonderful in that component. The pace, as we talked about, works phenomenal. Flashy and bright enough with enough energy to keep your hyperactive little ones in their seats, but at the same time not so mind-numbingly flashy slash kiddified that adults can't enjoy it, because there's so much packed into this film and it just keeps moving, only kind of hitting a couple of ends where it needs to, only hits a couple of slow paces that really can deter it, but then it gets right back on track, which to me is awesome. So kudos to them for that. Now, in regards to essentially like the action and fast-paced scenes, those took a little bit of a hit, so I'm going to wait to hit those on the dislikes. But when they do finally hit, they've got the same kind of energy. But I guess the thing I like too is there's a story and a moral. Yeah, the first story was a lot better in terms of execution and evolution. This one's story didn't quite have the same, I should say, plot depth to it, but it had a lot more emotional one and definitely took a new page in terms of lessons on a lot of components. A little more character centric than the previous one, that actually kind of hit very close to home, and I did enjoy those components and felt that it had some good teaching lessons to it. So kudos to them for trying to expand upon the characters, and as a couple of YouTube reviewers said, this is what a sequel does, is to sort of expand the characters and really bring them in, as opposed to resetting them back to square one. And I think this movie did a really good job of continuing that story. It just didn't quite have the same sense of adventure that the first one did, which is what I was missing. I guess, though, I'll have to say that one of my biggest likes, though, is the soundtrack. Again, if you're not big on soundtracks, you're really not going to care. But this is one of those that has enough energy that goes so well with the movie. And while Disney is, of course, the master at making standout songs that are going to be timeless, they often have a little bit more of a Broadway Oscar feel to it. These are more of your common, albums that you would hear on iTunes and on the radio. They got energy, they've got infection, and they still work at telling the story. So it's not that they're just random merchandising components in there, as some animated movies love to do. It really works at just kind of hitting up with the inclusion of the story, being a catchy song, pun intended, and having just that vibe that will have you dancing in your seats, or as Mary was trying to get me to do, is to stop playing it on my phone. Nevertheless, those are where the likes are. Now, in terms of the dislikes, there aren't many, but just a couple I want to bring in. First of all, the action component, which again, I'm an action junkie, and it's not that the action wasn't bad. When it hit, it kind of carried the same theme, left enough out of the violence component so that way, it can't get a rated PG-13 and still get its intended audience. But it still missed some of the energy. I remember in the first one when you got to see Morgan Freeman's character, Vesuvius, kick some butt with a walker. It was pretty epic for this fight. And then bringing in all those fun chase scenes, it was dynamite. In terms of this one, I don't think that they quite had the same energy and pizzazz. They went more a comedy aspect with it, and while funny, I just think it didn't quite have that same action flash that I fell in love with, and they were very short-lived. Plot-driven as it was with emotion behind it, it just still was not what the first one had, which is a component I really missed. As I already said in the kind of the likes and dislikes component, the adventure aspect, not so much in this one. I felt again a little more of the emotional connection, comedy connection. So I did miss that adventure component again, that wild discovery of uncovering each world. I guess that gimmick had already been done, and because you already knew kind of the twist that happens in the first Lego movie, they just decided not to add anything. So I did miss that creative component of it. I'll say that again, I did also miss the use of the other characters. In the first one, despite having all the references that they did, you still got great inclusion of other characters. And in this one, I kind of felt it didn't happen. Unikitty, the random spaceman, even Batman, not quite as well utilized as they were in the first one. So I really miss that aspect of it. I guess with the new characters that they brought in, there had to be room somewhere. But perhaps a little more integration would have gone a long way than what half of these characters were kind of reserved for. Again, they still have their quirks and their qualms, which I'll give them kudos for, but it just wasn't quite the same feel as I was hoping. Not bad, just not the same. That's kind of where it is outside of it, though. Again, it's not quite as cleverly designed and written. Maybe the gimmick's been a little too old, but definitely it holds a special place in terms of the animated movies I've seen so far this year. I had a blast with it. I think your kids will have a blast with it. It's a very fun movie and a sequel that really expands. And I could go on for hours about this, but again, I'm trying to do a full review and I've still got another one to film. So definitely check this one out, guys. Your little ones will love it. Most of you will love it if you love the first one. Get ready for a lot of cultural references galore because it's going to be awesome. And yes, that's another pun to it. You heard my scores. In terms of the category, it's probably about an 8. In terms of movie overall, 7.5. But definitely get ready for your soundtracks and stereos to be booming with the songs that are coming with this. Totally check it out in the theaters if you get a chance. Otherwise, definitely a must-watch for home when it comes to play. Anyways, guys, this is Robbie K signing off. Thank you so much for checking this out. Please share, like, subscribe, or give me some constructive criticism or comments, and we'll try to expand upon them. Have a good night, and thanks again. Bye.